Hello YouTube, Plays back once again for another No Man's Sky related video, and today I'm finally going to be getting around to talking about two things. One, what my predictions slash expectations are for the 1.3 update, so what I actually think could potentially come in this update. And two, the second part of this video will be some more general wish listing and stuff that I'd like to see in the game, but not stuff that I necessarily think is going to be part of this update, or indeed stuff that I think not necessarily is going to actually come to the game, but stuff that I would like to see. So, let's jump in straight away with 1.3, what I think is going to be in the update. Of course, the first thing that I have to mention is portals. So, as anyone who's been watching my videos in the past knows, this is about the only thing at this point that I'm certain of that is definitely going to be coming in the next update. Portals are going to have some sort of functionality. Now, there's an awful lot of speculation and different ideas going around on what that's going to be, whether they're going to unlock multiplayer, whether it's going to be some sort of story or lore related thing, whether it's going to go back in time on a planet so that the planet that you're on, you sort of step back and then it becomes a different version of that planet from like ancient times or something like that. So my personal guess, my theory on this is that it's going to be lore related. I don't think it's going to open up multiplayer. I don't think we're going to go through a portal and suddenly be connected to everybody's worlds on one huge server. I just don't see that happening at this stage. I really do think, based on the fact that the ARG has been created and there's a lot of like lore and story that's been made around the ARG, I do think lore is going to be more where it's focused at, and the story of the game, stuff like the fourth race and the more sort of development into that aspect of the game. So my personal guess would be the portals are going to be some sort of Atlas related lore. You'll go through them and they might take you on a sort of path of the old ones or the Atlas or something along those lines. I don't think it's going to be multiplayer, but of course I think that's kind of a given that portals are going to do something. We all know that, so that shouldn't surprise anyone. I could be completely wrong, we'll see, I don't know. But that would definitely be my prediction for the portals and what they're going to do. Now, on the back of that, the second thing that I definitely think is going to be a big part of this update is the lore and the story in general, and that's because all of the Waking Titan stuff related to the ARG goes quite in depth in terms of the lore and the detail and the depth that the sort of story and wording around it all has involved in it. So I do think that's kind of hinting towards this being more of a lore focused story update type thing, and I think that will tie in with the portals massively. That's my main prediction for the stuff that's going to come in this update for sure. Now, the other thing, also kind of related to all of those things, is the fourth race. Now, this was one I wasn't sure about until fairly recently. With phase 2 of the Waking Titan ARG, one of the puzzles that we all had to solve actually mentioned a fourth race. So there was a little bit of wording in there. A lot of people might have missed it. A couple of people have done videos specifically on it, but there was a little section when you put in your code and deciphered it, it popped up saying race fourth. Now, it's a tiny little clue. I can't see what else that could possibly mean. I do think that is pointing to a fourth race. I think that's going to be a big part of the lore and the story that's built into this update. Whether we actually meet or see a fourth race being added to the game, you know, like the Gek and the Korvax and the Vy'keen, if an actual another character race gets put into the game, I'm not sure, but I do think there's definitely going to be some story stuff. I could honestly see it being more along the lines of we're uncovering a sort of storyline and a backstory to what this fourth race was. Maybe some ancient race that used to live, the old creators, the old gods, something along those lines, without necessarily having to actually have those characters in the game, but definitely some sort of uncovering of the story and the lore around that. That would be my guess. That's my prediction. Now, there's two other things that I think are going to be in the update. Probably one of them I'm less sure about, and that's something to do with multiplayer aspects. So I've said I don't think multiplayer itself is coming in this update, and honestly, that's just my gut feeling. I can't see it happening just yet. It might happen one day. I don't see it being in this update. What I can absolutely see is more multiplayer elements and aspects, similar to the kind of stuff that's in the game already. So think of your base sharing, your comm stations, stuff that you can sort of put down, or even the simple stuff like naming a planet and other people being able to see the name of that planet. More of that kind of thing that allows some sort of connection, interaction with other players without actually having traditional multiplayer where you can meet up with someone in the game and play together and see them. I think it's going to be more along the lines of little sort of connections that aren't actual multiplayer. So what I think the key thing here could potentially be is to do with trade. Now, this is kind of potentially a bit of a long shot, but it's the few that I've got from some of the websites, the Myriad stuff, the Mercury process, some of the stuff that's come out of the ARG so far, some of the wording on those websites seem to mention things like trading with other players, potentially being able to know when another player is near, that kind of thing. So my guess would be maybe trade. Trade could definitely be another thing similar to the comm stations and the base sharing and all that kind of stuff that they could implement to allow interaction between players without having actual traditional multiplayer. So how could this work? So potentially there'd be a certain type of building that you could find on a planet, similar to your sort of outposts and trade stations at the moment. You go to one of those, there's some sort of trade ball, comm station, something like that you click on, and it comes up with like a galactic trade menu that's actually tied into other players. Think of like a sort of marketplace type thing, right? So you can put an item on there, select what you want to trade it for, and another player playing the game somewhere else could access that menu and upload their items, and then you could like swap. Something along those lines potentially could come into the game. If there's going to be any multiplayer type stuff, I think it's going to be along those sort of lines rather than actual traditional multiplayer. That's just my guess. These are my predictions. I could be wrong, but that's the kind of feeling that it's giving me so far. Now, the final thing, and I honestly think this is going to be the big thing, it's kind of more of a subtle one. So I think a lot of the work that's gone into the game so far behind the scenes, honestly, potentially right from day one up until now, this is something that I expect they've probably been working on, and that is tweaks and improvements to the actual algorithm and the procedural generation itself. So what I mean by this is I expect that since the game launched, they've been constantly working on trying to improve things like the variation, the way terrain is generated, the way planets are sort of generated and connected together, things like different biomes potentially being more prominent on different planets. So at the moment, planets are usually fairly similar all the way across. So you go to a planet that's a grassy planet, for example, typically most of that planet will have a similar sort of look and feel. There might be oceans, for example, which are different. There might be some more rocky parts, but I really think improvement to that procedural generation and the algorithms will be a big part of this. So potentially seeing one part of a planet that's like heavily dense forest type thing, and then another part that could be like desert or scorched, or you know, like real variation within the planets, better improvement to the character and the fauna generation and the plants and stuff like that, just more improved variation, all these kind of things that are going to make each planet more interesting to explore, more surprising, more of those, oh wow, that's new kind of moments that we all love. I really think that's going to be kind of the main thing that really makes us go wow. Like, it's going to be, in terms of adding stuff that's new, it's not like the other things, you know. It's not bam, Portal's a whole new aspect to the game. It's not, here's a new story that wasn't in the game before. It's more of an underlying improvement to all of the core stuff that's already in the game, just tweaking it up, making it a little bit better, so that it's closer and closer to what we sort of saw in the trailer versions of the game. I don't think it's going to reach that level, so don't get too hyped, don't get too excited based on this, but I do think there's going to be some improvements there for sure. So they're the key things that I personally expect. But maybe not expect, that's probably not the right word. They would be my guesses. So if you're going to say to me right now, you have to guess, what do you think is going to come in the update? They're the things that I'm thinking. I don't know if all of those will come in. They're just some of the things that I think potentially we could realistically probably see in this update. Of course, I could be way off, who knows. These are just my predictions, so don't get carried away. I've done loads of updates on actual facts and things that have come out of Waking Titan and the ARG. This is definitely very separate to those videos. This is the one video where I'm going all out on my guesses and speculation and things that I'd like to see, rather than the facts, but those are definitely the ones that I could personally see absolutely being believable to think that they might come in the update, and hopefully they will all come. That would be great if they do, but we'll see. It's not too long to find out now, so fingers crossed. Okay, now this second part of the video is the bit where I'm going to allow myself to have just a little bit more fun and be a little bit less reserved. So I'm not going to give you any warnings about controlling your hype and your expectation here. That was for the first part when I was talking about things that realistically I expect might come in the update. I could still be wrong, but they're kind of more my actual predictions. But this part, I'm kind of going to go all out. This is more of a general wish list. If I could have my own way, what stuff would I see coming in this update or future updates or just at some point in the game? What improvements would I make? What cool things do I think I would love to see in the game? Some of this stuff will probably never ever happen. Let me be clear on that. I don't actually think this is all going to happen, but it would be really cool stuff that I would absolutely love to see. So, the first one here that I wanted to mention is kind of still going on to one that I think is actually going to come in the game, but to a greater level, and that's the improved procedural generation and the algorithm behind the sort of core gameplay and the core world building in the game. I would love to see that reach the level of the planets that we saw in the trailers, which obviously we know were scripted. I would love to see an algorithm, a procedural generation so advanced that it could actually create planets that were that crazily unique with such awesome like interactions and behaviors and generation and variation. I would love to see the algorithm reach that level. That's a huge like wish list. I know most people like would love to see that in the game. I don't think it's ever going to reach that level, but that would definitely be super cool if it did. Now, the next thing is kind of similar to that. It's another one of these challenges that you have with procedural generation and the way that worlds are generated in the game. But that's the actual behaviors of things like the NPCs and the animals. So animals is a big one. I love finding awesome animals in the game. It's one of my favourite things to do. I've seen some truly amazing creatures in the game, as you guys know. But one thing I would definitely love to see is the animals acting in more unique ways. So things like animals fighting each other in more dynamic ways. Things like animals traveling in big herds or big groups or little families, you know, or maybe even just like one or two animals that have like got together in like a mismatch, you know, like some sort of big creature that's randomly happened to like make friends with a smaller creature of a different species, and you just kind of see them doing their own little thing in the world. Just like unique little things like that and animal behaviors that you'd be like, oh wow, that's like a really special little moment that we're seeing here. Now, on the back of that, there's a few other things that I'd love to see with animals. The first one, you guys have, if you're watching my channel and you have been for a while, you definitely would have heard me mention this before. And that is, I really want to see amphibious creatures. That would be so awesome. Just imagine it, you're walking down like near the shore, near the beach, near the ocean in the game, and you see like a huge creature just like emerging from the ocean, like swimming out onto the shore, and then like getting up onto its legs and just walking off, and then maybe like going back in, like crocodile type creatures or something like that. Creatures that could actually do both, that could swim and be in the ocean and also come onto land. I just think that would make for some really cool moments, and I would love to see that. It would be super awesome. Fingers crossed one day that comes to the game. Now, the other thing similar to that is the same with flying creatures. There are some awesome flying creatures in the game, some that look really bizarre, some that look really cool, some that just like blow my mind when I see them, but you never see the flying creatures land. They're obviously just flying creatures in the game. Now that's cool, but how cool would it be to see like a giant dragon or eagle or something that's in the game flying over the horizon one minute, and then the next minute it just like swoops down onto the ground and starts walking around. I just think that would be another like really cool thing to see. And the last thing on the animals front is, of course, the huge serpent snake-like creatures that we saw. I would love to see those in the game. I don't know why they're not in the game. There are definitely similar looking creatures like that fly around in the sky in the game, so I don't know why there's no like big snakes on the land. It's possible that they're out there and I just haven't found them, but yeah, I'd love to see some giant snake-like creatures. I think a lot of people saw them, thought they were cool, haven't been able to find them in the game. That would be a really cool thing that I think would be pretty easy to add. So yeah, that's another one that I'd like to see. Now, the next thing that I think would be so amazing, and I don't know technically how difficult or even if this would be plausible, but I would love to see some scripted moments built into the procedural world that we're all in and that we're all exploring. So things like I mentioned, the animal behaviors, like animals making friends, animals doing something really unique and special, to the sort of level of detail that you couldn't do it randomly, right? You couldn't procedurally generate it. It would have to be something that an individual had like programmed in to make it do something particularly cool. Now, the way in my mind I would see that potentially working is you have these really cool scripted moments, so some sort of really awesome interaction between two animals, or maybe an NPC like falls off a cliff and injures his leg or something and then he's trapped on the floor, something like that kind of thing. It could be anything, it doesn't really matter what it is, but something like that that's like too much detail and like too much general human interaction would have to go into making that happen for it to be procedural. But you could do something like that. So maybe they could have a set of these scripted behaviors or interactions, and then they could sort of program them into, so they're hand scripted and crafted, but then program that into the procedural generation, but make it very, very rare. So maybe once every like 100 planets you might come across one of these scripted moments that's just kind of like pasted onto the planet that you're in. I don't know if that could work, but I feel like being able to have these really intricate, detailed, scripted moments, it would have to be rare to keep it special, right? And if they could only do so many of them and build them in, you don't want to be seeing the same one over and over again. That'd be kind of weird. They'd have to be unique, so they'd have to be super rare. They'd have to be quite a big pool of potential scripted moments that you could stumble across, but they'd have to be rare enough so that you'd probably only ever see like 2 or 3 in the time that you played the game. But I feel like that could really allow for some like super hard hitting like wow moments where you stumble across something really, really special, and I think that'd be super cool. Now, the next thing that I kind of want to see in the game is NPCs walking around outside. So the NPCs in the game are cool. I like the races that are in the game. I like the character models. I feel like they're really quirky and funny. I do like the style of them. I would just love to see them out in the wild on planets. You know, I'd love to be walking around on a planet, mining some like carbon or something, and then I bump into like a little get guy that's going on a massacre and killing all the animals around me, or something crazy like that. You know, he's just running around with his little blaster popping all the animals, or fighting the sentinels, or maybe just chopping down some trees himself. You know, something like that would be super cool. And if not that level of detail, then just have some just plopped around on the planet. They don't have to be doing something super interesting. Just have more of them out there in the world that you could go and find. I just feel like that would be a cool thing to break up your exploration and be like, oh, there's a little get guy over there, or oh, look, there's a Korvax dude over there, let's go see what he's doing. I feel like that would be really cool to have that. And now, the next one, this is one that I think a lot of people have said. It's not really an original idea. I've seen loads of people say this, and I 100% agree. And that is more dynamic and extreme weather systems on the planets. So I'm thinking like super heavy lightning storms, volcanoes that actually erupt, floods, you know, like crazy stuff like that, hurricanes, tornadoes, all kinds of like crazy weather effects that could be put into the game. You know, some of the extreme planets have storms at the moment. You know, it will rain quite heavily, or there'll be a lot of toxic wind or something like that, and they look really cool, but it's just taking that up a few notches to like the next level, so that every now and again you come across a planet that has really dynamic lightning and thunder effects, and everything's flashing and it looks crazy. Maybe even see like lightning strike a tree and actually damage it or something like that. That could be so cool, and of course it would make for some awesome pictures in photo mode, which you guys know I would love. So yeah, extreme and more dynamic weather effects would be super cool if that ever was added to the game. And that brings me on to my final thing that I'm kind of wish listing. If I could have anything I wanted, what I'd put in the game, and that would be change. So this is, I thought about this for a while. Some people probably wouldn't like this. I think it could be really cool if it was used sparingly and in the right way. The ability for some planets or environments or places to change over time. So, for example, I go to a planet and it's fairly barren. There's a couple of trees growing. It's like a grassy planet, you know, but there's nothing too amazing. You know, it's not like a lush, amazing planet like some of them are at the moment. It's just an okay one. You know, there's some cool grass, there's some little trees every now and again, some streams maybe. It's looking okay. And then potentially if I came back at a later date, so say I warp across, I'm traveling somewhere else, and then one day I decide to come back to that planet, or I make my way back across the way I've come, something like that, and I stumble across that planet again, it would be super cool if over time the planet could change. You know, the trees have grown more. There's now what was like a little kind of barren, bleak area with a couple of trees has grown into a dense forest that looks really cool. Or a planet that was like okay before has now like grown into a really lush, awesome planet like some of the other ones you see. Or equally the other way around. You know, you might go to a lush planet, and this is where people probably wouldn't like it, but you find like a lush planet, and then you go back there one day after a long time, and it's become like scorched and like barren, and something terrible has happened there, and now it's not a lush planet anymore, and there's just like the odd trace, like the odd little area that just shows you the clue of, oh wow, this used to be that planet that was super lush. Maybe there's a little tiny bit that still has some really nice grass and trees, but most of it's like scorched and burnt down. Something like that could be so cool, and there's all kinds of things you could do with that, right? Like there's no limit to what that change could be, but that would be super interesting. And I feel like it would make it really good to go back and visit some of the other planets. It'll give you more of a reason to go back and visit some other planets, right? Because at the moment, I love finding new planets. Like, I'm so addicted to it. I get so excited about exploring new planet after new planet, and I always want to see what's out there. There's so much to discover in the world, but there's not much reason to go back anywhere apart from the planet that you have your home base on. And of course, on the back of that, one thing that's, I'm not even going to include this as a thing that like I want or a prediction. It's just something that should be in the game, and I don't know why it's not. And that's some easy way to go back to planets, to like put a waypoint on them, to put a marker on them, to build a little campsite or something that would let you easily teleport back to a planet. Because I find so many beautiful, beautiful planets, and it's like I can only pick one to make my home base, and I want to be easily able to go back to one that I saw. You know, say like episode 10 of my Let's Play series or something, I find an amazing planet, and then like 60 episodes later I'm like, oh, I remember how awesome that planet was. There's no way I'm ever going to find that again. Like, yeah, sure, I could write down the coordinates, but then it's going to be an absolute nightmare trying to get all the way back there. It would just be so much easier if there was a quick and easy way to like mark a particular planet, and then be able to just teleport there whenever you wanted to go, and just to have a little look around and visit it. I'm not asking to be able to make bases on every planet, although that would probably be pretty cool, but just a way to go back and visit them or bookmark them, that kind of thing. That would be super cool. Alright guys, so that's my video on the predictions of what I think is going to happen in 1.3, and remember, that was only the first part of the video. Most of this video has been me talking more generally about like crazy dreams and wish listing that I would have in the game. It's not stuff that I actually think is going to come to the game. It's just a lot of people have asked me if I could have anything I wanted in the game, what would it be? So they're just some of the things that come to my mind. Now, don't take this the wrong way. You guys know that I absolutely love the game at the moment as it is. I'll be honest, at the moment it is the game that I enjoy playing the most. There hasn't been a game in recent years that's really hooked me the way this game has. I just love the exploration. I love the sense of joy and adventure I get when I'm playing it, and it's awesome. But these are just some things that in a perfect world, if I could have anything I wanted, yeah, go for it. Like, these are the things I'd throw in there. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that one, guys. As always, if you have enjoyed it, please do drop a like and a comment. That stuff helps like crazy. And of course, I'll be back with another No Man's Sky video very soon. Take care, guys, and peace.